and Collaborati 4.9, which will go into production on Saturday, the 11th. I think now we're going to Cal to talk about the e-billing, CSM, and Collaborati items.
Yeah, thanks. Are you seeing my screen here for CSM
Looking good.
7.1?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so like at a high level, the problem that we're trying to solve here in the market needs are just some of the areas in the e-billing process that delays the invoice payments. So the timekeeper rate onboarding process, specifically around accuracy of some of the information on the timekeepers. And then there's a certain situation where the rate currency selection is either set up wrong or defaulted, especially for new implementations or clients that change over from another e-billing system. And so that's one of the other main pain points. These are two of the higher voted idea portal features. And so I'm going to talk about those today in CSM 7.1. At a high level, CSM 7.1 requires Team Connect 7.1. It does not, you cannot have the 7.1 with 7.0. And the main reason is that Kim will talk a little bit later on responsiveness and this, enhancements to logging. One of the big changes was that the CSM logger, which causes a lot of traffic with that sync, was taken out. And so it's separate from the Team Connect default logger now. And so again, CSM 7.1 does require the client to be on Team Connect 7.1. Good news is that what Manu went over is causing a lot of excitement, and we have a lot of clients set up to upgrade over the 7.1 here in the spring. At a high level, the main pieces we're going to talk today, features and functionalities, simply expanding the current timekeeper classifications. And we want to align with leads.org, which is one of the kind of governing bodies in the e-billing world. And paralegal is the biggest one that stuck out that we haven't had for a very long time. And we should have had. Legal professionals, another one that was from feedback called out. Then clerk, secretary, and legal intern are standard ones that we also included so that we're aligned with leads.org, although not necessarily highly used. It's sort of more of a alignment with the regulatory body of the Leads Oversight Committee. Another big addition was classification details. It's going to show it's a new text field. And this comes from every client that you talk to wanting to say, well, we want our list of classifications. There's a reason why we have some standardization with that. And it's pros and cons, of course. But this new text field is going to allow more information to be added. A lot of examples. We have clients that call it associate level 3 or 5th year associate, or senior associate or junior associate, and they can actually add a lot of that information now on the classification details, which should help the onboarding process as well as rate reviews to say like, well, why is this associate higher than the others? Why is this of counsel timekeeper much higher? Oh, the retired federal judge. That makes sense. Information will be included there. So enabling the expanded timekeeper classifications, this is an opt-in. So when you upgrade to CSM 7.1, it is not automatically pushed to the client. And the reason for that is not everyone has this, but some might, where they have searches or reports or even rules that are looking for specific timekeeper classifications. Adding new ones in there, we want to make sure they're ready for that, and that they have updated any rules or searches that might say like, show me all of my timekeepers for classification. If it doesn't include the new options in the filter or something like that, then it would be short-sighted. So we want to just make sure that before they actually enable these, they are set up to do so. They'll have to be confirmed. Once clicking this, enable these timekeeper classifications, it can't be undone. But all it does is on this page lets you choose which ones are now authorized. Today, you cannot authorize these for invoice charges. These new ones here, once they enable it, they will have this option. So just because you click yes, you still could uncheck all of these. It's not a use or lose it type of situation. It just is making sure before they start authorizing and syncing that they're ready to do so. It'll also send an update to Collaborati once that's enabled. And the key there is that Collaborati seems very simple. Oh, add a couple more classifications. But now Collaborati firms will have clients on older versions and newer versions, some that support paralegal, some that don't. Makes it a little trickier on their end. From the CSM Team Connect side, though, it's pretty straightforward. This is an example of the timekeeper authorization wizard where you have the classification. Under it now it says, the classification details text field. So it's a legal professional. They're a translator. So it shows up here. On the rate request, if you do the timekeeper list rates that we introduced the last version, and you have a new timekeeper with a rate, on the same actual rate request, shows the category of other timekeeper, and this is where they can add those classification details, retired a federal judge in this example. And let me just stop here on a high level. The biggest benefit and value that really comes out of this is that we get more accurate reporting. Spend analytics is better because previously you had like legal assistant maybe was used for paralegal, or either other timekeeper might have been used. You have some of these mismatch in reporting on, well, what is the rate for technically a legal assistant? Were they a clerk or secretary, things like that. And with at least some of these ways that we are expanding it, you'll have better reports, more accurate reports that give you better insight on what we're actually seeing for the timekeepers categories, as well as going down to the classification details, additional information that also can provide context. If you do see an outlier, why is this other timekeeper rate higher over the last 3 months than before? And it might be a timekeeper's position that was, or their expertise, in this case of like a retired federal judge that keyed that difference in the reporting side. So at a high level, that's kind of where a lot of the benefits will come in, is more of the accuracy course onboarding, and then reporting analytics for spend based on the timekeeper's classification. The other big change is timekeeper rate currency selection. So if you're not in support, or maybe even services, but most likely support, you might not know about this. But essentially, before Team Connect 7.1, the timekeeper rate currencies, once they're set up in Team Connect, they only can be changed in the contact records in Team Connect. So we've had a client before who implemented e-billing, and they came from like T360, and everything was defaulted to US dollars. They had thousands of timekeepers that needed to be updated, and they had to figure out either a script to do or a manual way to update all those correctly. Collaborati can't do anything about it. If a timekeeper moves from London to the Paris office and now is going to be billing in euros, they cannot actually send a request to update the currency in those use cases. So in 7.1, they will be able to do this. And after upgrading, this will become available. And there are new sort of warnings and validation rules in the CSM settings on the billing profile that I'll show you, as well as some caveats and validations before you actually overwrite a rate request if it changes currencies. So at a high level, I'll show this here as the rate billing profiles on the CSM homepage, and you can find these rules. There's 3 of them. If the current proposed currency is different from the timekeeper's rate currency and it's in the system, throw a warning. It will also throw a warning if they don't have anything put in the system, because it defaults to like US dollars, typically, whatever the system is. But there's an option that they can say, well, if there's nothing there, we don't actually care. You can override it. It's not a big deal, so we don't necessarily need that warning. There's also the ability to say, well, if the clients that are really sticklers about this, well, I don't want them to have a different rate than the office billing currency. So there's a rule for that to validate. And then at the bottom, it's just a safety rule to say, well, if there's any invoices that are pending in process, we don't want to change their rate currency because the validation rules are firing on whatever rate they have. So make sure that those are completed before we update, again, if they change an office. And so this is what it kind of looks like. I'm going to actually show you in the system quickly because it's a little easier to see. But again, before 7.1, they cannot do this. You have to change it, and the burden becomes, support can't help, the burden is on the client. So in this case, I have a timekeeper named Summer here, who currently has a rate in the system of GBP. Now, you can only have one rate currency per office that is associated with this timekeeper. So the proposed rate now is, maybe that was incorrect. It should be in US dollars, or this person moved from London, for example, to the New York office, and now the rate needs to be in US dollars. This is showing you that the proposed rate is in a different currency, so that's new. That shows you here. shows you the warnings of the rate items because I have those rules on that this is different. If that's correct, I can approve this. If it's not, I can reject it. We also see this warning that tells us at least one proposed timekeeper rate, is different. So it shows the client is. The second thing we did, sort of the next level, is that I cannot approve this until I'm okay saying I'm going to overwrite the timekeeper rate currency, because it is a big enough change. We don't want someone coming in not reading everything and just clicking on approve. They do. I'm going to get an error message. Nope, the overwrite currency must be checked and prove this rate request. So we have a button here that makes it easy that they can just click overwrite timekeeper rate currency, goes to yes, and now they can approve it. They click that accidentally, can go back in and uncheck it. But it makes it to where they don't have to go into the edit mode. If they can use this button to say, yes, this is correct, summer should be in US dollars, I can overwrite that, and now I can make that approval. So this was a really big pain point, especially for the firms, because they want to get their information in correctly. And again, was one of the higher voted pieces on the idea portal. The last thing is I want to call out a couple additional features. So one of the biggest ones for everyone to note, and for messaging around timekeeper diversity information, in 7.1 for our risk-averse clients, we've had a couple that say, you know what, we have this policy, like we don't want to see anything, even if they accidentally enter it in and send it to us, we don't want diversity coming in to CSM from Collaborati because of who is in the e-billing admin roles. They aren't supposed to see this, or we get it in a different way. Therefore, we just don't want to sync anything. So there are now settings in 7.1 to say don't sync over any of the information, don't sync over anything in the logs. It could be at the office level, or it could be globally sent. There is also another setting for office currency, where sometimes as a workaround for these problems I mentioned about rate currency, the office billing currency will change temporarily so that the firm can send another invoice or a rate in a different currency. For some of our clients, it affects their downstream systems. So this is the option to say, well, we want to make sure anything is updated, we capture it except for the billing currency. And again, we'll have some more detail around these settings and what I just showed in the training videos. But at a high level, these are additional features that are in 7.1. And last but not least, going back to reporting, we added a rule and a couple fields on the actual line items for the invoices to capture the timekeeper classification at the time of the invoice creation. So that way, when you do a report and you look back, you're like, why does this partner rate so low? 2 years ago, well, it might be that the person was an associate 2 years ago, and then now they're a partner. So there's a chance that, of course, they could actually change classifications due to promotion. So the idea here is that we actually, or retirement, we're going to capture historically this field on the line item so you can report on it and have more accurate information. Now, this was another idea portal from a client, as well as I believe the iOS IQ team was doing stuff around reporting. This also helps them as well. And if there's any questions, please let me know. I know I'm about at time, so I'll kind of just mention our Collaborati updates. We'll have more detailed training videos as well to dive into it. But I'm showing you here that the new settings that are going to happen when they upgrade or they enable that expansion will be reflected in Collaborati. And now going forward, if I have a client that allows me to have any of the new expanded classifications in Collaborati, I will see them. If none of my clients are upgraded to 7.1, I won't see the new ones. I'll only see the old ones. And going forward, if they have, this is the trickier part, if they have a client, that's, on 7.0 or 6.3, and a client that's on 7.1, and the timekeeper is a paralegal, well, I can't have a paralegal for the old ones. What is it going to be? So we have rules in the background that will create default timekeeper classifications in the client timekeeper profile. So this is already set up to do this in Collaborati. That way, one client sees legal assistant that's on the old versions, and the new client that's on the new version still sees paralegal. And it's a little bit different in Collaborati, but for the client end, like I said, there's no impact. Upload file is changed as well to accommodate these, as well as the ability to export these details out of Collaborati. New classifications can be, PL for paralegal, and the classification details. So the manual processes and the upload processes are all updated with the new features and functionality, again, based on the client settings. So when they upgrade to 7.1 and enable the expanded classifications, they'll see this. When they upgrade to 7.1, they will see that the timekeeper rate currency selection is now supported. And so if they are sending a rate request for any client that's on 7.1 or later, they're now going to have this field currency, which they can change. So previously that didn't exist. There wasn't the ability to select this. It is still going to be validated. So they can't have a currency of GBP for one rate, let's say matter rate, and the default rate being US dollars. It is one rate per office as it is normally. And the rules apply in Team Connect still. So we validate that, of course. And then we let them know, again, if you're going to send a new rate currency to a client, we want to make sure the firm knows this before they submit it. So there's a warning message, just lets them know this is correct, send it. Otherwise, you might be trying to change the currency accidentally, or you don't need to send this if that's not the case. So at the high level, those are the changes in Collaborati side. Like I said, for the CSM piece, it's really, not a huge amount of features and functionality, although it is a key expansion of the classifications.